Hi everyone, it's William back with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1915 YouTube series, and I should note right at the beginning that the photo I'm using today and the title, the cakewalk, referring to a kind of dance that I believe was popular around this time, and at some point, I don't know if it had already, would make its way to France, and it was an African-American dance, and there is a dance referenced in one of today's diary entries that somewhat fits. I don't know if it actually was the cakewalk, but anyway, I thought this was a nice photo. Our recap. Well, I misspoke yesterday. We did the 25th and then jumped to the 27th and 28th of July. And I said, well, that's it for July. That's it for August. And now we are skipping ahead to toward the end of September. But in fact, yeah, I did misspeak. There was one more July entry for the 29th of July / 11th August. And so we will be doing that one before making the jump to September. So what did we have last time? Well, you know, Dmitri saw some of the things that go along with war, went along with war during the First World War. I don't know if airplanes and bombing had been much used before. You know, in any conflict that preceded the First World War. I think of the Boer War. I don't think of bombing in relation to that, but I could be wrong. Anyway, refugees. Refugees always go with war. And the bombing, apparently, he just says airplane bombs. So I don't know how close he was to seeing that. But anyway, things are really getting serious. It's getting harder and harder to push such matters out of one's mind. So yeah, why did he omit August? Well, something very significant happened in August on the 23rd of August, 1915, which was the 5th of September on the Western calendar. Nicholas ousted Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich from the role of Supreme Commander and took over himself. And Nikolai Nikolaevich was more or less banished to the Caucasus. He still had an important military post, but it was clear that it was a kind of banishment and that there was a rift, that there was some fear, I think, on Nicholas's part. I should go back and review what documents are available for that time period. Yeah, and so there was some fear of Nikolasha as the more popular, even though the war wasn't going terribly well, and he wasn't the most brilliant supreme commander. He was a forward-looking man, which Nicholas absolutely wasn't. The General Staff Academy had a reputation for producing people who were progressive, not on the, you know, sort of woke modern way, but they wanted to take a pragmatic view of things and to be modern and to be forward-looking and not to get caught up in things like, oh, Russia must be an autocracy, better to move on to constitutional democracy. And, you know, there is this, or there was this strange relationship between Nicholas II and Nikolasha. I'm sure you've all seen the photos of Nikolasha just absolutely towering over Nicholas, who was 5'6", I believe, and Nikolasha was a very tall man. And also this, to some extent, apocryphal story of the end of the 1905 revolution, when Nicholas was being urged to allow the creation of the Duma, of a legislative body with elections, and he was very reluctant to do that. And Nikolai Nikolaevich went to see him to very insistently tell him this needs to be done. And the apocryphal part of it is that it is said that Nikolasha took out a gun, a handgun, and put it to his head and said, if you do not sign the October Manifesto, I'm going to blow my brains out right here. So I guess I should have given a trigger warning about that, but because suicide is no joke, or threatening suicide. But I don't know if the story is true or not. But so there's this tension between Nicolasha, who's 100% general staff in his outlook, and his father too. I mean, we tend to laugh a bit at Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich Sr. because of all his excesses, gambling and that sort of thing. But he was a serious reformer. If you don't believe me, read my dissertation. I mean, military reformer. So anyway, where did Dmitri stand in all of this? As we resume, as we go forward, and we start September on the 21st, it's already happened. Well, Dmitri figured prominently in this. And I meant today, before I started, I have the 3 volumes of Maurice Paleolog's memoirs. He was the French ambassador to Russia, and he was one of the people who appealed directly to Dmitri, knowing that Dmitri was a kind of surrogate son to the Tsar, and said, please, can you go to him and plead for him not to do this? And Dmitri did, or tried to, but Nicholas, knowing what was going on, wouldn't receive him until it was a done deal. And, you know, Paleolog has a very touching account of Dmitri pacing the floor and chain smoking and being really nervous, but agreeing that this had to be done, and agreeing to do that, or to try to do that. So things had gotten very, very serious, not just for Russia, but for him. And as I said before, I mean, I keep emphasizing this, I think it was the beginning of the end for his sort of happy-go-lucky attitude. Not that he ever really had that, because he was a depressive individual, so I shouldn't say that. But the end of his ability to be disengaged. And as you know, it will all culminate in the Rasputin assassination. Anyway, I'm taking up all the time we need for diary entries. Maybe I'll just do 2 today. But the thing about the dance comes later. Well, I'll try. Okay. 29th July / 11th August, Baranovici, morning bath, read, lunch at Stavka, bones, riding on the gray, jumped, Orlov, vodka, dinner, Jewish cinema, Golitsyn's conversation until 2 o'clock a.m. I meant to look in my notes about which Orlov this was. Because there were lots of Orlovs, and there was an Orlov who was a member of the suite, and I think he was called Vladi, which would be Vladimir, and, you know, he's present all over in Dmitri's diary, so I should have looked in my notes for the diaries, but apologies for that. Yeah, it always interests me, his bathing habits, and, you know, later on, say in 1921, he would be bathing every day, and when he was at Shatzelp, you know. But back then, I suppose typically for everyone, you didn't take a bath all that often, and he doesn't seem to have liked the bathing facilities at Stavka. So anyway, and then the Jewish cinema stands out. He's mentioned it before, and I would assume that it is a cinema owned by a Jewish person or people, and not a cinema that showed specifically Jewish films. Okay, yeah, so the Golitsyns, we've talked about before. Vava Golitsyn, a great friend of Dmitri, the future godfather of Dmitri's son. Okay, here we go. We're up to the 21st of September, so we've jumped ahead almost an entire month. And it's a done deal with Nicholas's takeover. There's no more headquarters at Baranovici, and Nicolasha is far away. Here we go, 21st September, and Dmitri is in Petrograd. 21st September / 4th October. Morning at Papa's, gave cufflinks. Michin, Kirill, Boris, Maria, Misha, Kreutz. all day in Tsarskaya, had dinner there too, evening in Petrograd Club. So the occasion was Paul's 55th birthday, Papa's 55th birthday, Grand Duke Paul Alexandrovich. Dmitri gave him cufflinks. And yeah, an interesting guest list, because it seems that there's kind of a bond between the Pavlovichi and the Vladimirovichi. So Paul's older brother, of course, was Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich. He'd passed away, I think, in 1909. But the widow is there at Paul's birthday party, along with two of her sons, the two eldest, Kirill and Boris. I suppose Andrei was probably at the front. Maria was there, of course, and Misha, Grand Duke Mikhail Alexandrovich. He seems to have been a part of this circle too. You know, they were a little bit more progressive than other members of the imperial family, all of them. You know, Misha would have been happy with a constitutional monarchy. Paul made it clear that he would be happy with a constitutional monarchy. You know, Kirill and Boris, well, Kirill famously supported the provisional government at the time of the February Revolution. So they're kind of like-minded people. Kreutz being Olga Kreutz, Princess Palay's daughter, so Dmitri's stepsister. So a nice family gathering for Paul's birthday. And then he goes back, and where does he go? Well, you know, we all could have said it without even reading the text. He goes to the club. He goes to the yacht club. That's pretty much his home in Petrograd, although he has his own palace. Okay, finally, here we go. 27th, so again, we're skipping forward from the 21st to the 27th. I don't know what he was doing in between, because he wasn't making notes. 27th September, 10th/10th October, went to Gachina for lunch. Misha, Abrikosov, Irevanskaya, blank, a missing name, Abakanovich, tea at Boris's. It was very nice. So there are two events going on today. One is getting together with various people at Gachina. The other is tea at Boris's, which was very nice. Well, that's nice, isn't it? The cousins together, Boris, Andrei, and Kirill, or at least Boris and Andrei, were very kind to Dmitri when Dmitri first moved, and Mikhail was too. When Dmitri first moved from Moscow to Petrograd, they kind of took him under their wing, and he liked them. Later on, it would be different. You know, Boris would be offended when he was in Monte Carlo and he saw Boris very nearby in a car and gestured to him or said hello, and Boris just kind of made a sour expression and pretended he hadn't seen him or something like that. But for the time being, they're you know, they enjoy each other. Not close friends, but they enjoy each other. Okay, so you're wondering, where does the dance come in? Well, we have a treat today, thanks to Alexandra and Natasha. We have a diary entry written by Misha, by Grand Duke Mikhail. And that's where the dance comes in. Now, no mention of Brasova. She was probably there. He just doesn't mention her. Just like at Paul's, he doesn't mention his stepmother, even though, you know, they were not on bad terms at that time. But it is what it is. So here is Misha's diary entry. After lunch, Dmitri did a Negro dance. At 3:30, we went for a ride in the Rolls-Royce and Renault of Dmitri. Okay, so I phrased that awkwardly because I wasn't sure, because that's the word order in Russian. We went for a ride. It could be, there's no comma, but it could be we went for a ride in the Rolls-Royce, comma, and Dmitri's Renault. So what's not clear is whether Dmitri owns both cars. It wouldn't surprise me if he did. He liked cars. He'd been excited about getting this Renault, which was very new. So they might have both belonged to him. But if any of you know whether Mikhail and Brasova had a Rolls-Royce, then please let me know. And so then the dancing. Yeah, so I'm guessing what dance it is. It's called a Negro dance by Misha, which was not a pejorative term at that time. It was not disrespectful at the time to use the word Negro. In fact, it would have been considered quite correct. And what do we know about Dmitri and dancing? Well, we know Dmitri was a good dancer, and we know he loved to dance, and we know he sometimes got in trouble with his dancing. And if you watch the videos for the 1906 video, then you know he once got slapped by Laming for doing this Japanese dance, this dance that I can't remember what it was called, but it was from Okinawa, I think, and it was a specialty of that area, a special dance of that area, and it was done exclusively by women. And it was a very dignified dance, so I don't know what Dmitri did clowning around. He probably did it in some, goofy, suggestive way, and he got slapped by Laming. And then later on, in 1917, or rather 1918, when he was in Tehran and he was invited to a dinner at the Russian mission, the Russian legation in Tehran, he would get a little tight and roll up the carpet and do what he calls a sand dance. And the ambassador there, or the minister there, Eder, would just be mortified by that it was so undignified, and would take him to task for that. But Dmitri loved this sort of thing, and he loved ragtime. I'm not sure if the cakewalk was danced to ragtime music, but this would have been so typical for him. And in fact, in 1921, kind of joking, kind of not, he said, if I know that I'm definitely not ever going to be the Tsar of Russia, then I'm going to marry whoever I want, and I'm going to support myself maybe by being a professional dancer. So, I'm sure he considered himself someone who could have done that, but I don't think he ever really intended to. So he was the Fred Astaire version of the Romanov Grand Duke. Okay, yeah, that's about it. We'll get through in less than 20 minutes. Although, not although. What do we have next time? Well, so I forgot to say that all of these people who were in Gatchina, Abrikosov, Erevanskaya, and Abakhanovich were friends of Michael's. They weren't all military men. One was a diplomat, but they were all close friends of Michael's. The middle one is a woman, Erevanskaya. She's a woman, and she was the husband of a man who was a military man and a friend of Michael's. The husband was probably at the front. So Dmitri, of course, is taking note of this. And so next time we'll have him getting together with Madame Erevanskaya. We will also have the return of Brasova and of I can't remember her first name. Was it Olia? Countess Benkendorf, who he had been exchanging letters with and kind of pursuing, and she'd given him a miniature painting of herself. And we'll also have a significant death, a non-family member, but something that Dmitri is really saddened by. So come back for all of that, and I'll see you then. Bye.